Hey, and welcome to another episode of Rennch. On today's episode, we are going to continue to work on the cooling system, try to figure this whole thing out, and tie up a few odds and ends. So full disclosure, I wasn't going to record this. I was going to put my earbuds on and just do a little work, and I thought, you guys deserve better. You should be part of this whole thing because we're hanging together. A couple of episodes ago, I worked on the cooling system by running some hard lines through the tunnel of this 69 911. And a few things came from that. Let me just sort of try to fill in the blanks as much as I can. Number one, am I going to get a bunch of heat into the cabin from the cooling lines? And the answer is, I don't think so. Or certainly I hope not. I'm doing a bunch of things to mitigate that. I've got venting in mind. I've got insulation in mind. There's a lot of really cool high-tech stuff on the market now to prevent, like think about airplanes and things like that. There's a lot of technology to prevent the heat and the cold from reaching the passengers. So I will be employing as much of that as I can. One of the factors is this original pipe that I got, which is 1.25 inches inner diameter. I think it's a little bit too big because if you look here, these are the original Porsche OEM lines from the 996 and the Boxster and the Cayman. They're actually only 1 inch wide. So I have picked up more aluminum conduit that is 1 inch, and I'm hoping that that's going to be plenty. I mean, it's got to go all the way back to front, so there's going to be some cooling capacity just in the length of the tube. But it also gives me a lot more room to move stuff around and gives me a little more airspace around the tubes themselves. So first part of this video, I'm going to just cut these tubes down and see if I can insert them. Second, I want to go over these radiators I got. So I got a pair of radiators from the Porsche 996. I definitely know they are too big, like unquestionably they are too big for the amount of space that I have in my car. So I might mock up some kind of fake radiator, just out of paper or something, just to see what size I need. I think I need 10 by 18. So if you guys know of like a 20 by 18 radiator, or even maybe 20 by 20 I could pull off, where I could have it cut in half and then use that as 2 separate radiators, please let me know in the comments. That would be really, really helpful. But what I'm gonna do is, I've got original brackets from the oil cooler installs that were on this thing before. I'm going to cut those little tabs off and just see what kind of space I have. Ideally, I could use this setup, which is killer. It's got the radiator, it's got the AC condenser, and it's got a fan all built into one thing, but it's way too tall. I think I can get away with it lengthwise, but it's too tall and it'll hang out the bottom of my bumper, which would be a total bummer. That's number 2. And number 3, I'm going to show you guys where I'm going to run the fuel lines and the wiring, which is in this cool kind of hidden spot in these early cars. So let's get started. Hey, by the way, I don't know if I introduced you guys to Ben. Hey, Ben, come here. Look at new shop dog. This is Ben. This is Big Ben. That's him there. You're famous, dude. You're on YouTube. How do you feel? Can you sit? Can you sit? No? There you go. Good boy. Anyway, super cool dude. He's the official shop dog from now on. Anyway, so that went really well. These things are going to fit way better. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to cut off these tabs and start sizing up the radiators and see where I am at the moment. Oh, one more thing. I heard all of you guys about the shifter. There's a bunch of really cool aftermarket shifters out there. I'm gonna reach out to a couple of the companies and see if anybody's interested in sponsoring this build. If you guys know of anybody that does really cool 996 or Boxster or Cayman shifters, you know, have them reach out to me at Rennch on Instagram. If you guys aren't following Instagram yet, you should do that. Anyway, let's go cut these tabs off and see what kind of space we have for the 996 radiators. I'm not optimistic. Okay, it's a few days later, and part of the challenge with this build in and of itself is that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be engineered on this car, and I'm not an engineer. So I have to do a ton of research to figure out kind of what angle I'm gonna go with, what parts I need. I gotta see what's out there, so it gives me ideas on how I can fabricate stuff. And if I need somebody else to fabricate it, I've got to do that too. Today we're going to continue to work on the cooling, and the cooling really for this build is probably the biggest challenge of everything. You can run much smaller oil coolers than you can run radiators. And doing a twin turbo, 400 horsepower car, I've got to solve a few things in terms of cooling. So what I've done is I've looked into the Porsche 996. The 996 had dual twin radiators. It had lines going through the tunnel. And pretty interesting how they ran it. They ran a single 1-inch line for the hot side and another one for the cold side. Then once they got to the front of the car, they split, went to the top cold side, or I suppose the top would be the hot side, drained and cooled down, and then went back to the engine cooler with the 1-inch tube. So it's kind of a parallel thing. Instead of going in through one radiator, all the way through, then to the other radiator, all the way through, and then back, it went out, split, through each radiator, then came back. I'm not sure which is better, but I'm assuming because Porsche did it, it's probably the best way to go. So I've installed these 1-inch tubes now. What I'm going to do is get some aluminum bungs welded on the end, and if I can, I'll show you kind of what the plan is in terms of an AN fitting. Then I'll use hose to split out to each one of the radiators. The problem is a radiator the size that I need is not exactly the easiest thing to do, so I've been looking into getting custom radiators. This is a Porsche 996 radiator. This is 14 inches by 14 inches. That gives me a usable radiator cooling square inch of 196 square inches. So I'm thinking sort of right around an inch per horsepower, if possible. The other one that I've been looking at is from, I believe it's like an MG Midget, and it gives me about 180 square inches per radiator. Before I do anything, I want to figure out literally how big of a radiator I can put in, and that's where this comes in. This is a piece of 1-inch foam that I got at Home Depot for $5. What I'm going to do is cut it in half, glue it together, so I have a 2-inch thick piece of foam, then get under the car and figure out how wide and how long I can physically fit in the car. I think I have an idea of what radiator to use, but I'm not positive. So I'm going to start with this and mock it up and see where I'm at. And hopefully I can use the one that I have in mind, which I'll show you guys in a minute. So this foam is exactly 24 by 24, I believe. Yeah, 2 feet. 2 feet, perfect. So I'm gonna cut it in half. Easy to cut it in half, and then I can glue it and put it together. That's what I'll do. This cut doesn't have to be super precise because I can use the other edge. Alright. Perfect. So now I have a 2-inch thick mock radiator. Let's go see how it fits. Okay, custom 10 by 18 radiator at your service. Okay, you guys, I think I have it here. So this is 10 by 18. It took me some trial and error to figure out kind of what the orientation would need to be, because this wheel needs to be able to fully turn and articulate without hitting anything. I had it more inboard this way on the back end. You can obviously see the big outlet for the air scoop. I have plenty of space for a fan on the other side, so I can make that fan assembly work. And what I'll do here is I'll have the inlet, the hot side, will come in. I'll probably run a hose. It'll run up through here and then connect to the hot side, go down, and then the cold side, the cooled side, will be on that far end, and it'll run under the car and then back to the tube on the other side. By Jove, I think we've got it. So 10 by 18, and I'll show you what I found. Today I priced out some custom radiators, and that is giving the dimensions, telling the person where I wanted the fittings, and the depth, what kind of radiator it was, and it was $640 each, which seemed like a lot of money to me. So I did a lot more research, and I discovered that the dimensions that I need for this radiator, which are roughly 10 by 18, are the same dimensions for a 1967 through 1974 MG Midget, which, if you check it out, Amazon has them for $155.51. eBay has them 2 for $122.55 each. So I'm going to get a couple of them, and I'm going to have them reworked, or I'm going to rework them with a TIG welder that I don't own yet, into what I need. And if all goes well, it won't be the craziest investment, maybe 500 bucks all in for the cooling system. And if it works, then it is the biggest bargain in cooling and fabrication, I think. So I'm gonna give that a go. If it doesn't work out and the car is still overheating, I do have a couple of spots on the car, especially once the flares go on, to put another radiator. So I'm gonna need dual condensers for the air conditioning system, which I was gonna use in the same spot I have them on the Grey Ghost, which is in front of the rear wheels where the flares are, right? For the rear flares. But they're pretty thin, and they theoretically could be placed in other places, including in that small spot on the other side of the radiator that I'm doing now. So it's possible that I take care of all of it at one spot. Anyway, all of these things to consider. Super exciting. I found some radiators. I'm going to give them a go. I went to a performance and race shop today in Southern California, and they had everything you can imagine in terms of like different fittings and bungs and fittings and hoses and literally everything you need for this. So I'm gonna get the radiators in and start mocking up exactly how I'm gonna mount them, what kind of fans I'm gonna put on. I can make custom fan shrouds. I'm not super worried about that. But I don't know, huge win today to basically just mock it up like a 996 cooling system. I have one more thing I want to show you. I was talking to Dave from TRE Motorsports about where to route everything. Obviously, I have the coolant lines running through the tunnel. And incidentally, for you folks that are really worried about the heat shielding for the tunnel, I saw at this performance place today the thing that people are using. So I will definitely be sharing that with you in a future video. Here's all the stuff that has to go front to back in the car. I've got coolant lines. I've got brake lines. I've got hydraulic clutch. I've got wiring. I've got fuel. I already said brake lines. Is that it? Oh, e-brake cable. So I have to choose where to put all that stuff. In the tunnel, I obviously don't want to put fuel next to a couple of really hot radiator pipes. I'm going to not do that. I will, however, put brake lines and hydraulic lines for the clutch through the tunnel. So I'm going to have brake, coolant, clutch in the tunnel. Next, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the wiring and the fuel. So I'm talking to Dave from TRE about where everything has to go. And he goes, oh, just run the wiring and the fuel through the rails. And I say more about that. And this is what he's talking about. I had these plates blocking these things off. That hole is a hollow frame rail hole, and it goes all the way along the edge of the car, through the car, and it ends up there. And if I want to, I probably can even make it end up further in. So I'm going to have access basically through this tunnel for wiring and for fuel, which is awesome. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Appreciate you watching as always. I'm going to hit myself a little old-fashioned in my robot bartender back there. You just throw this little cartridge in. It picks from whiskey, and you have literally one of the best old-fashions I've ever had, which is crazy. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for hitting the gaddish little notification bell, and hit me with a comment down there and tell me what you think of this little Blasphemy build. All right? See you next video.